Right now it's time for that time when we have our special guest. Tonight's special guest is Michael Morrissey. Michael is the author of over 20 books and he is here tonight to tell us about his brand new one. It's called Taming the Tiger, a personal encounter with manic depression. We welcome Michael Morrissey as our special guest on The Beat Goes On. Michael Morrissey, welcome to The Beat Goes On.
Glad to be here, Gerard.
20 books, a lot of writing.
Yeah, well, I'm a professional writer. I'm a full-time writer, and as well as the 20 I've had published, I have plenty of extra unpublished manuscripts stashed away in boxes.
What makes a writer? Where does it come from that you want to write?
Well, I think in my case it grew out of being a reader because I didn't have a very adventurous life. I think they're the two main pathways to writing. Something big has happened to you. You got lost up the Amazon or something, you feel I've got to write about that.
Yeah,
but I came to it as a reader from reading science fiction. One day I was so enthralled with reading it. One day I just thought, I could write one. That's how it started.
Yeah. How do you know that you're a good writer?
Well, you have to somehow tell yourself that you are, and of course publication gives you a certain validification, and then there are the views of critics. So it's a mixed process of self-evaluation, the praise of a few friends, and publication, and then the praise of a few critics. I've had lots of encouragement and discouragement. I mean, there's nothing. When you've written a book that you think is good and it's been rejected several times, it's very depressing. And I usually tell myself, well, I'll allow myself 2 days to get over it, and then you either revise it and send it off to a new person, or stick it in the drawer for a while and do something new.
But Michael, you're here today. Wonderful book called Taming the Tiger. It's all about your personal encounter with manic depression.
Yes, well, I had 2 manic episodes in 1999, and of course I was already in my 50s, so when the first one arrived, I had no way of recognising what it was. I just thought that I was going through a very inspired period, which I was, which the psychiatrists then tell you is flight of ideas, meaning an awful lot of ideas going past. I found that the process of thought itself, that's what's going inside your head, became more pleasurably complex, and you seem to have several thought streams that you would link from one to the other. This is very pleasant, and it means that you're never bored. And I had no idea that this was the process of mania, the process of the flight of ideas. And then, of course, you have other symptoms like you stay up all night and you talk very fast and you seem to wander around the subject a bit or move from one subject to another. Religious ideas can return. You may think that you, at one stage I thought I was the Messiah, but I very wisely kept quiet about it.
Well, that's strange because I think I am.
Well, my advice is not to mention it. But the effect of it was that I went around being very kind. Whenever anyone asked me for money, I gave them some. Not a lot. So all the street musicians in Queen Street benefited from my manic phase.
Let's talk about manic depression as a statistic.
Yes.
Today they call it bipolar, do they?
Yeah, it's exactly the same condition.
What proportion of the population would it affect?
Well, the Americans who initiated the change of name way back in 1980, but it's only fully caught on recent years in New Zealand, they say 1%.
1%.
But a lot of that's what the Americans say around the world. But if you look around the world, you might find in India it's 0.1, and in America it's actually 4. Now, the theory goes that Asian people are less likely to manifest the symptoms of mania because their culture has enabled them to deal with these pressures of the mind more effectively. We all know Americans tend to be excitable. The Americans typically will often go to paranoia of a grand type, and I myself, of course, had the standard paranoias, which one of which to think that people near you are trying to poison you, or that the police are after you, and so on.
So here you were, Michael, you're a good author, you're happily married, you're going about your life. The first attack, the summer of 1999, which is about 11 years ago. Well, you really don't know that things are changing, do you?
No, it's only on your second episode that you are aware that an episode is coming. The first time you have no way of recognising it.
Now, how did you get through that first episode?
Well, I was due to see a doctor for an HIV test, which was again based on a delusion that I had the symptoms of HIV contamination, which proved to be totally false. But when I was with the doctor, my manner was excitable and over-talkative, so he told me that I'd turn hypomanic, which is a sort of mild form of manic mania. So he persuaded me to see a psychiatrist. And although part of me was resistant to the idea, part of me thought, oh well, I have been very excitable lately, maybe there's something in it. So I accepted the medication, which is the standard medication is lithium. And after a week or two, it starts to return you to normal. They don't know why exactly, but it does. It sort of lifts you up from the possible depression and calms you down from the
And then you're able to see the world clearly again? Or
well, you're just back to normal.
Back to normal.
Back to normal.
And then people started telling you about the first episode, what you did, and...
Well, it wasn't so much on the first episode because that wasn't so visible to the outside world, but the second one, unfortunately, when I returned from Malaysia, and this was some very amusing episodes in Malaysia, amusing to me, but very embarrassing to Anne, my wife, was I shifted to paranoia, which is one part of the dark side. This is a mania, not the depression side, which is also very dark, of course. And so I thought it's a standard paranoia that my wife was poisoning me in the breakfast. Now, through the breakfast. Now, obviously, that was a paranoid delusion. But unfortunately, I carried a machete into the kitchen. I didn't wave it around, but I carried it in.
Yeah.
Because at this stage, I was so psychotic, I thought my wife had been taken over by an evil demon, and I was going to be attacked as well as poisoned, both delusions. So, of course, she held herself very calmly during this crisis, but the police and the psychiatric authorities were called, and then I was taken away to a psychiatric ward. But I, fortunately, returned to normalcy very, very rapidly once I've had a lot of sleep, and they pump you full of lithium and maybe a couple of other drugs to bring you down. So
it must be confusing to experience this and know nothing about it, hence why not write Taming the Tiger?
I realised when I got through it, not at the time because it's so intense, that the experience was so intense and interesting that it was gold, writer's gold, and it needed to be written about. So a lot of people think that what I did was courageous. I didn't see it as courageous. I saw it as a writing challenge. Here was this extraordinary experience I'd been through, the most extraordinary experience of my life. It demanded to be written about.
Our audience, our viewers, they might be sitting next to somebody. They think, my gosh, you know, the person next to me has a touch of manic depression. So
right.
What are the signs that'll tell you that something's not as good as it could be?
Well, I actually list 75 in the book, but to make it simpler, pressured speech, speaking very rapidly and irritated if you're interrupted, and shifting the subject of discussion constantly. So pressured speech, staying up all night, having little or no sleep, crazy schemes to make an awful lot of money, spending money very recklessly, impulsive behaviour like driving your car too fast, or possibly sexual indiscretions that you might normally not do, thoughts about God and the devil, which may or may not be revealed. And then you can have panic attacks and paranoid things. So they are some of the main symptoms. So if all of those arrive quite dramatically, I mean, usually the first one is probably the pressured speech, staying up all night and getting very excited. The manner is more excited than normal. That would be the most obvious sign, but they overlap with the symptoms of taking pee, which I've never taken, because people who take pee stay up overnight and talk a lot. So you need the extra ones of the spending a lot of money and wanting to make a lot of money.
How do you make sure that it doesn't happen again today, Michael? What do you do?
After going on and off the medication, I've gone back on it, right? So that is obviously the main thing you can do. Having proper sleep, at least 6 hours a night, 6 to 8 hours. Regular habits, and trying not to get too overly emotional when you have an argument or in some situation. So stress, which often produces emotionality, is one way to push you into a new manic episode.
If somebody would love to read this book and learn more about manic depression or bipolar, in all the bookstores?
Just a few selected bookstores. The best line of approach probably is just to contact Polygraphia. Go to their website. They are the publishers, and you can buy it directly from them.
And we've got a little treat for our viewers. We've got 3 books to give away, haven't we, Michael? Very kind. Thank you. Big thanks to the publisher. We're going to have 3 winners can win
a wonderful copy of Taming the Tiger. Just email Gerard at the Beat Goes On, Gerard at the Beat Goes On, and the question will be the name of the book, which of course is Taming the Tiger. Just put that in the subject line. We'll do a draw, and 3 lucky people will have this book.
Well, I hope they read it and tell all their friends about it, particularly their manic depressive friends.
Well, I can only say thank you for coming in today, Michael.
Thank you, Gerard.
Wonderful
Wonderful
to hear all about it.
Love to do it again.
Okay.